Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. We still have a high surf advisory out here for the south side, southern shores of St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast, and that's out until 6 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, and that's due to the southerly winds that have been occurring over the area there. And that could result in, of course, heavy surf. That'll result in heavy surf that could result in some minor beach erosion in those areas. And again, that's out through 6 p.m. tomorrow, but the winds will be coming down pretty nicely before that time. And for the satellite imagery today, you can see lots of clouds spreading northeastward here around high pressure that's redeveloping over the interior. And that brought some clouds and up to about 2/10 of an inch of rain to portions of the North Slope on out to the Arctic coast today in areas there. For example, about 0.22 of an inch fell at Umiat Airfield this afternoon. There's one of the heavier amounts up there. And then back to the west, you can see the back edge of the frontal system of a pretty good storm that's rolling across the Russian Far East of the back edge, right about there at picture time. Lots of clouds continue to cover the Bering Sea, a little bit of a breakout in front of that feature here just south of St. Lawrence Island. So you may be breaking out into some sunshine there, probably currently, and for at least a couple hours anyway, until the clouds roll back in. Some good clearing here on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, up across Kodiak Island, into Cook Inlet, and on up into the Tanana Valley there. Looks like even to the upper Yukon Valley. Of course, that allowed temperatures in the sunshine allowed temperatures to rise into the lower 80s. Copper River Basin, Chitina, for example, 81 degrees. Susitna Valley back into the lower 80s with 82 degrees recorded at Big Lake. Thunderbird Falls on the Glen Highway had 83 degrees actually, and then right around 80 degrees both at Willow and Talkeetna, and about the same on the Kenai Peninsula. Sunshine there at Kodiak Island, and a few breaks here out along the Kuskokwim River Valley area into the Delta. Otherwise, some isolated light precipitation occurring here for the Seward Peninsula on down along the Yukon Delta coast today, and also a little bit of light stuff up here. Tin City picked about 200, so this is quite light. And as I mentioned, Ambler had about 2/10 of an inch. And then the winds also with this, mostly with a warm front, the main storm back to the west, but winds gusted anywhere through the Bering Strait today. Breivik Mission had gusts 35 miles an hour, while Tin City had a gust of 40 miles an hour. Even stronger up here, Cape Lisburn had a gust to 46 miles per hour this afternoon, so quite windy conditions there, and it's a southwest and northeast wind fetch there. That's why they have the high surf advisory out for St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, due to that persistent nature of that wind field. Otherwise, a very weak low here south of central Aleutians brought just 0.02 of an inch of rain to the Adak-Atka area today with cloudy skies there. Fog visibility is generally under 2 miles today over the Pribilof Islands. And then the clouds on into Bristol Bay, some very light precipitation, drizzle, fog, or thick dew, bringing just a couple hundredths of an inch to a couple of reporting stations there, mostly on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Sunshine on the south side, and thunderstorms pretty light and scattered here over the eastern Alaska range, northway down toward Nabezna and possibly the Wrangell Mountains, with some showers trying to develop over the extreme northern panhandle, up toward the Klondike Highway and Skagway. And then thunderstorms did develop here just east of the border there of where Hyder and Stewart are, very close. Otherwise, pretty nice here with temperatures into the 70s with a lot of sunshine across the panhandle. And the forecast for tonight, not much difference there. It'll be variably cloudy to mostly clear, with the shower and thunderstorm threat diminishing there over the southern-eastern border there. Chance of a thunderstorm, that moisture slipping down, possibly into Yakutat, or at least, well, right through here, which is right across Yakutat. Just a slight chance, more likely to see a shower or two. Fair over the southern interior, high pressure at the surface now. We've got 3,020 millibar centers from the Northwest Territories into the eastern interior down to the Yukon Delta. And that's going to direct all this storminess and precipitation. It's going to keep it to the west and to the north. Some of that will slip on in with that warm front, catch the central and maybe the eastern Arctic coast with some light precipitation. Scattered showers along and southwest of the Brooks Range, cutting off, though, by the time you get to Kotzebue Sound. Could see some clearing there for St. Lawrence Island with diminishing winds. You can see the gradient really slackening off now by midnight tonight. And this system keeps a chance of rain in from Adak all the way over to Nikolsky, maybe on Alaska Dutch Harbor. Outlook for Monday. Front still back here to the west, sunny and warm, temperatures 70s to possibly mid-80s here over the interior. Could see some 70s up there over the north slope, and very nice conditions. Maybe clouds trying to increase Kodiak, but it'll still be a dry day tomorrow with areas of sunshine, mostly sunny Bristol Bay. This system, the moisture field, actually slips a little to the east here, and so a chance of rain, drizzle, fog, that sort of thing for the eastern Aleutians into False Pass, King Cove, maybe Cold Bay. This warm front tries to push some moisture, light as it is, in toward the Pribilofs, but may not make it. And the southeast coast, again, pretty nice conditions. Thunderstorms again develop there just near or east of Hyder and Stewart. Otherwise, partly mostly sunny a day tomorrow, much like today with light winds. Shower chances, thunderstorms try to form also just north of the border there and become a little more extensive here over the eastern Copper River Basin area, again from the eastern Alaska Range to the Wrangell Mountains. Kind of an easterly wave developing in here. In fact, probably a pretty good chance of thunderstorms there, and that's going to move westward overnight Monday night and Tuesday, right in over south central Alaska, so increasing thunderstorm chances, western Alaska Range toward Denali, east side there, upper 40-mile country, maybe as far north as Eagle. And also a pretty good chance of thunderstorms here along the coast of the Panhandle, as well as over toward the east. Definitely more clouds and showers, more convective. So kind of a change. Tomorrow being the last sunny day of the current streak. And the remnants of this week front keep a chance of light precipitation with wind not even a factor anymore. Alaska Peninsula right up into the Bering Strait. And for lows tonight, 50s over the interior, all the way down to the North Gulf Coast, 40s in the Bering Sea and the North Gulf or the Arctic coast, lower 50s for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow again, 60s to upper 70s for the Panhandle, 75 to 85 south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, Copper River Basin, 75 to 85 also eastern interior, right on down into the Kuskokwim Valley, followed by lows pretty mild again, 55 to 60 over much of the interior, upper 40s Arctic coast, otherwise 50s everywhere else. And for the highs the following day, we've got for Tuesday, again, 75 to probably 85 here over the central eastern interior, into the lower 80s again in the Copper River Basin, and 75 to 83 again these Susitna Valley into Anchorage and the Kenai Peninsula, 60s to lower 70s for the Panhandle. And up along the Arctic coast, not too bad, mid to upper 50s there with temperatures in the 60s, may push 70 in some areas up there. And that same pattern here into Kotzebue may see highs around 70 degrees. Otherwise, upper 40s to mid 50s. That's a high of 57 for the Pribilofs.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Monday morning. A lot of IFR, central Bering Sea on out to the west. Aleutians IFR, Alaska Peninsula marginal. Marginal VFR right up the eastern Bering Sea and the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta from about Togiak Bay, Norton Sound. Some IFR there right off the Yukon Delta coast. Looks like it's extending over towards Savunga and then up towards Nome. And some IFR on the south side of the western Alaska, western Brooks Range. VFR, eastern interior, and some marginal VFR off the Arctic coast or along the central coast there, maybe off the coast. VFR for the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, marginal VFR looks like it holds in over the Prince William Sound area as well as along the North Gulf Coast and right along the coastline of the Panhandle there with the IFR staying offshore. VFR, Kodiak Island, greater King Salmon Dillingham area northward through much of the interior. Lower conditions still possible there on the central and western south slopes of the Brooks Range. VFR up there for the North Slope and right on the edge for the entire Arctic coast. IFR, central western Bering, and much of the Aleutians. And for the Tuesday morning outlook, good VFR here, Bristol Bay, Fognac Island there, northward, Cook Inlet, including the Kenai Peninsula. Prince William Sound still looks a little marginal, otherwise pretty good in the interior here with IFR near or just off the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. And then the usual IFR here, a little bit more expansive than into the Bering Sea, a little farther to the east here, but marginal VFR right along and in some cases inland there along the southwest coast. And then for the afternoon, IFR still a threat there for southern St. Lawrence Island and the Pribilofs as well. Looks like it'll be socked in with IFR from the Alaska Peninsula westward across the Aleutians, VFR here over the interior. Some moisture sliding westward, so we got some marginal VFR with due to convection here developing there along the north coast range into the Talkeetna Mountains. Otherwise, VFR up to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, including the North Slope, and the Panhandle here looks marginal. Passes shaping up like this for Anatuvik and Atigan, both starting out possibly marginal, becoming VFR during the morning hours through the afternoon. And Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR tomorrow, same forecast for rainy, good VFR. A great day actually shaping up for all of the Alaska range over to Isabella and Mentasta, both VFR there. Risk of a thunderstorm here possibly for Mentasta in the pass, otherwise Tanita, VFR, Portage, VFR, and Chilcoot and White, VFR. Moving on to the freezing levels, we've got, again, real slack gradient aloft here across the state with about 10,000 or so, or say 8 to 10 here for the Panhandle, roughly 10 either give or take there across all of the interior. That cold air mass now shifting off to the northeast, so 10,000 feet back up and off the Arctic coast, and about 8 to 10,000 here over the western Bering, but 12 over the Aleutians. Icing. A zone out here with that, what's left of that front, which is by tomorrow afternoon will be right through here, kind of dissipating and just staying, may catch the Gamble area, maybe St. Matthew Island, that's about it. And then some icing threats above 12,000 feet there for the Fox Islands with that system just to your south. This area here, that'll be moving into the western Aleutians Monday evening and during the overnight hours. And then with the convection here, that's just north, may come down into the Skagway, possibly Haines area, but that's going to be sliding westward Monday night and into Tuesday. And for the jet stream here, one jet well to the south, even of the Panhandle, and the Aleutians, northern jet here, high pressure aloft in over the interior. Southerlies, pretty much parallel to that frontal boundary, so that's one reason it's not going to make any eastward progress. This is going to do a slow dissolve there in place right along that jet max. And for 9,000 feet, high pressure generally over the eastern interior, so south to southwest flow, could be up to 30 knots eastern Arctic coast, and lighter here from the south turning southeast 15 to 20 for the Alaska Peninsula and the southeast coast, 20 knotters from Dixon Entrance to off the coast, otherwise about 5 to 10. And for the 3,000 foot winds, really light central eastern interior into the Gulf, just 5 to 10 knots at the most, 5 to 10 for the Panhandle. And southeast 15 here across Bristol Bay turns southerly at about 20 to 25 through the Bering Strait. Turbulence-wise, light to isolated moderate chop here from Falls Pass across the Fox Islands, St. Lawrence Island, up to about Point Lay.
Floating hundreds of miles from Earth, astronauts get a unique perspective of our planet. While they might recognize landmarks, space is the only place they can see the very edge of our planet's atmosphere.
From orbit, particularly looking at the horizon, did bring to mind how thin the atmosphere is. It's like an onion skin around this great big ball of the Earth.
This uppermost layer of Earth's atmosphere, the ionosphere, also overlaps with the very beginning of space. It's the job of NASA's new mission, GOLD, the Global Scale Observations of the Limmendisk Instrument, to study this region, a region that isn't just for astronauts to explore, but that affects humans every day down on the ground. For one thing, this layer of the upper atmosphere helps protect us from harmful radiation and energy emanating from the sun. But in our modern society, it does so much more. It affects the smartphone that sits in your pocket and the radio waves that guide our airplanes. The ionosphere is a crucial layer of the atmosphere through which our communications and GPS signals travel. And when this region changes, it impacts those communication signals. Changes can occur above this region from the sun's activity, also known as space weather. Changes can also occur below from Earth's weather, such as hurricanes and wind patterns. Gold connects the dots between how space weather and Earth's weather shape the upper reaches of the atmosphere. But this region isn't easy to study. The ionosphere spans roughly 60 to 400 miles from Earth's surface, which is too high for aircraft and scientific balloons, and the lower regions are too low to easily study with satellites. What are attainable, however, are the swaths of red and green light shining out from the upper atmosphere. Formed when the sun's rays hit atmospheric molecules, this light, named airglow, comes from green and red bands of glowing gas. Some of the airglow is invisible to our eyes, shining in infrared and ultraviolet light, which can only be seen with scientific instrumentation. Taking advantage of our planet's natural glow is gold. The gold instrument, which is about the size of a mini-fridge, is hitching a ride on a commercial communication satellite, SES-14. The satellite's orbit lies 22,000 miles above Earth, where it can record images in ultraviolet light to monitor changes in airglow across the globe. These images give information on the temperature, density, and composition of particles in the upper atmosphere. Gold collects these observations faster than any mission has ever done before. It captures an image of Earth's entire disk every 30 minutes, allowing scientists to see how the upper atmosphere evolves throughout the day. Gold joins a host of missions studying the very nature of space, around Earth, the Sun, and planets. As NASA ventures farther and farther from home, knowing the nature of space itself is crucial for our journey to understand our solar system and beyond.
There's a new class of chemical compounds impacting the Earth's ozone layer and raising concerns among some scientists. But a new NASA analysis indicates stratospheric ozone could actually be impacted more by climate change and the continued release of already banned chemicals. The Earth's ozone hole is showing signs of recovery, decades after the landmark agreement called the Montreal Protocol that banned many chemical compounds harmful to the ozone layer.
So we know the Montreal Protocol was a huge success. This was signed in the late 1980s when scientists and policymakers from around the world gathered together to try to save the ozone layer.
The chemicals they regulated persist in the atmosphere for many decades. They thin the ozone layer and they create a seasonal hole over Antarctica. They basically take away part of our planet's natural sunscreen, and that increases the risk of skin cancer and damage to plants.
Scientists have projected the ozone hole could disappear almost completely by about 2075, but several factors could delay that recovery.
There are some industrial compounds that are not banned by the Montreal Protocol, but as they enter the atmosphere, they will also hurt the ozone layer.
But the unregulated compounds have a short lifespan in the atmosphere, unlike the chlorofluorocarbons that were originally regulated. So they have a short-lived impact on ozone, and we don't think they'll delay recovery by more than a few years.
We projected by 2050, more than half of the ozone-depleting compounds in the atmosphere will come from long-lived substances banned by the protocol.
Because these compounds stay in the air for such a long time, compared to the unregulated, short-lived compounds, they will have a disproportionate and lingering impact on ozone. So any non-compliance with the protocol can have significant consequences.
And the really big uncertainty in ozone layer recovery is climate change. There are many naturally produced ozone-depleting substances that are emitted by the oceans. And as the oceans continue to warm due to climate change, those emissions will increase, and that will further delay ozone recovery.
Scientists want to better understand how climate change will affect ozone recovery.
This is a hard problem. As a scientific community, we need to work on this major issue. We now have a powerful new tool to simulate atmosphere and its interaction with land and ocean to study this issue. And that's what we're going to do.
How can you see the atmosphere? The answer is blowing in the wind. Tiny particles known as aerosols are carried by the air around the globe. This visualization uses data from NASA satellites combined with our knowledge of physics and meteorology to track 3 aerosols: dust, smoke, and sea salt. Sea salt, shown here in blue, is picked up by winds passing over the ocean. As tropical storms and hurricanes form, the salt particles are concentrated into the spiraling shape we all recognize. With their movements, we can follow the formation of Hurricane Irma and see the dust from the Sahara, shown in tan, get washed out of the storm center by the rain. Advances in computing speed allow scientists to include more details of these physical processes in their simulations of how the aerosols interact with the storm systems. The increased resolution of the computer simulation is apparent in fine details like the hurricane bands spiraling counterclockwise. Computer simulations let us see how different processes fit together and evolve as a system. By using mathematical models to represent nature, we can separate the system into component parts and better understand the underlying physics of each. Today's research improves next year's weather forecasting ability. Hurricane Ophelia was very unusual. It headed northeast, pulling in Saharan dust and smoke from wildfires in Portugal, carrying both to Ireland and the UK. This aerosol interaction was very different from other storms of the season. As computing speed continues to increase, scientists will be able to bring more scientific details into the simulations, giving us a deeper understanding of our home planet.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. A little bit farther, this open area, a little farther to the north what we saw yesterday, and it definitely is melting out here. And with the southerly winds, general movement to the north of all the ice flows out here, with the exception of this heavier ice that's on just the north side of the barrier islands here off the eastern Beaufort coast. That area, this appears to be grounded, so it won't be moving probably much at all. And for the coastal water forecast for the Panhandle on the south coast here, northerlies 15 to 20 knots, seas at about 4 feet. Lighter winds up to the north, just 10 to 15 knots there with 2 to 3 foot seas. Southeast 15 for Lynn Canal, otherwise north to northwest, 10 knots for the central and southern inside waters. Tuesday, swing around to the south-southeast there for southeast for Clarence Strait, 15 knots, seas 3 feet. South for Stevens Passage at 15, and northern Lynn Canal, 15 knots from the south. Southeast 15 here on the south coast, 3 to 4 foot seas. Variable 10 to 15 on the north coast. And for Cook Inlet tomorrow, looking at northwesterly winds at about 10 knots with seas 2 feet, west 15 there for the Kamishak Bay area, across the extreme southern Cook Inlet area, and 15 knots right on out across the Barren Islands. North Gulf Coast, northwest winds, 10 knots, seas pretty slight there, just 2 feet. And Prince William Sound, same forecast, northwest 10, seas 2 feet. Outlook for Tuesday, light winds continue in the Sound there, bringing it around to the southwest though, and west-southwest for the North Gulf Coast, only 15 knots, seas 3 feet, staying light there. And for the Barren Islands, south at 15 turns southeast, same speed there into Kamishak Bay and Cook Inlet. Pretty uniform wind-wise, southerlies of 15 knots with seas 3 to 4 feet. Kodiak Island, tomorrow on the east side here, light easterly winds at 10 knots, Shelikof Strait southwest at 15. Otherwise, from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, light southwest winds, and then small craft advisories here on the southern side or Pacific side of the peninsula at 25 knots. Southeast 15 on the Bering Sea side and Bristol Bay. Southeast winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet. Those will become light southerlies for Bristol Bay on Tuesday with south winds of 15 knots on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Small craft advisories continue here for the south side. Easterly winds 25 knots will seas up to 8 feet. Otherwise, south to southwest winds from Castle Cape right on up across Kodiak Island. Those winds just 15 knots with 3 to 6 foot seas. And for the Fox Islands tomorrow, easterlies 25 knots on the Pacific side of the islands, and the Bering Sea side 20 knots. Seas 4 to 6 feet north to 7 to 8 feet south. And for Adak and Atka, north to northwest, 15 to 20 knots. Seas 5 to 6 feet. Westerlies 20 knots here west of Adak all the way out to Shemya, and seas running 6 to 8 feet. And then for Tuesday, southwest 30 knots here for the extreme western Aleutians, or Tuesday, and seas at about 9 feet. West 25, so small craft advisories all the way east here, except not quite to Adak. For Adak and Atka, west at 20. And then lighter winds here for the Fox Islands, kind of north to northwest or west-northwest, anywhere from 10 to 20 knots, and seas running 4 to 7 feet. Southwest coast tomorrow, south of Nunivak Island, or off the Yukon or Kuskokwim Delta coast, east at 10, southeast 10, light winds also for the Pribilof. Small craft advisory, St. Matthew Island, south 25, right on up across St. Lawrence Island, and lighter winds along the Yukon Delta coast. And 15 knots here north of Nunivak Island, up across St. Lawrence Island. From the south at 15, 4 to 5 foot seas. About the same for the northern Bering. Lighter winds for the Pribilof, south at 10, southeast 10 there, Kuskokwim Delta coast. And eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, west-southwest at 10, southwest 20 on the central coast, and small craft advisories here, probably from about Point Lay, 25 knots, become 30-knot winds again for Cape Lisbon to Point Hope, and then south of there, 25-knot winds to the Bering Strait. Much lighter conditions will come in Tuesday in the forecast. Southeast at 10 now, and 15 knots from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort. West side here, east of 15, central coast southeast 15, and then back around to the east there on the east side of the coastline, or along the eastern coast with 3-foot seas. For tonight again, high pressure taking over interior Alaska at the surface, and that's going to keep this system out to the west and move it north. Some of that moisture might graze the central eastern Arctic coast, and some lingering light stuff here along and south of the western Brooks Range.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.